All right. Um, do, 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 do. If I'm live right now, I'm trying to confirm that I'm live right now. So hold on 1 second. We're going to start officially in like 1 minute. I'm a little late behind the ball, but I need to verify that I'm actually live, which I believe that I am. I have every reason to believe that I am. It says that I am, so I guess I am. And it looks like I've got a few viewers in here, so yeah. And I don't know if I'm going to have I am pretty sure I'm not going to have my wife to help out tonight, so it's going to be all me and only me and nothing but me. So I think we are set. Thanks for coming in. Thank you for joining. Again, I don't expect this to be a big thing. Again, most of my viewership is on TikTok. I'm still under a permanent ban, not permanent, a ban for 1 week, which gets lifted, I believe, on Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's the time that they shut me off a week ago. So I should be able to go live and simulcast again on YouTube and TikTok simultaneously until such time as TikTok kicks me off for good. And there's my wife in the chat. So she doesn't have her microphone tonight, I don't believe. I don't think she took it to the other room. And if she did, I won't hear her because I don't have a way for piping her sound, I don't think. So anyways, I don't have a specific show, so I'm counting on you to see if we're going to stay on very long tonight. I did have an interview today with a podcast that was interested in my take on the Luigi Mangione situation and the groundswell of support for Luigi Mangione. I'm hesitant to tell you the name of the podcast because I don't know if I'm going to be on that episode or when it's going to air. So they're going to let me know if they're going to use the content. It appeared to go very well. And my wife does have her mic, so that's great for you, except for I don't have any way to hear you, I don't think. So if you do talk, you're going to be talking over me. So anyways, for what it's worth, that interview went really well. Like I said, the only reason I hesitate mentioning what the podcast name is I don't know if they're going to air the episode, if they're just playing around with the idea. I don't know if I was one of 20 people interviewed or the one guy they interviewed. In any way, shape, or form, I was on a podcast interview with the reporter, the journalist, and one of their producers, engineers. And it was a new experience for me. It was pretty exciting. They both told me at the end of the interview that it was an excellent interview and they were really happy with the way it turned out. So chances are good that I'm going to have some time on an upcoming podcast on Luigi Mangione. And when it does, I will let you know. And so I will tell you all about that. By the way, as a teaser for subscriber-only content on TikTok, there's a small $3 subscriber area you could subscribe to, in which I did tell the name of the podcast and the journalist that was interviewing me. But I just don't feel like it's appropriate to go public with it. But for the subscriber area, which is very small for me right now, I do share some extra details in the behind the scenes. So if you want to support the channel and if you want to get the inside scoop on the names of who I'm talking to, that is one way to do it. By the way, YouTube is also moving in the right direction. I'm getting closer and closer. Hopefully by the end of next month, I'll be at a position, or maybe even a little sooner, to be able to have new options available for YouTube subscribers to subscribe to the channel, to get notifications, to get some new options that are going to come in when I hit that first level of whatever you want to call it. So that's coming up when I hit 500 subscribers. We're at basically, yeah, there's a small amount of people in here too. So I don't know that it really matters. I was not told not to say the name of the podcast, by the way, but I just feel like I'm not sure how I feel about that. Anyways, on other topics, thanks, by the way, Kimberly, for coming in, and thanks. I mean, I see Renee in here. I see you guys come over from TikTok. That's super awesome. I really appreciate it. The YouTube thing just hasn't really, grown to the size of TikTok. So it's nice when you guys can come over here, and I love that you take the time to come over and support me on this. Free Luigi. Let's see. I fully support him, no matter if he did it, but I think he didn't do it. Free my man, free Luigi. That's interesting. So it's funny because that is part of what came up on the podcast today with the interview team. They wanted to know, what my stance on was. Did Luigi do it? Did Luigi not do it? Does it make a difference to me if he did do it? That's some things that we did talk about on that podcast. We talked about why it is that people support Luigi Mangione and whether or not I feel that the majority of people feel that he's innocent, or if the majority of the people feel like he did it, but it's okay, or whatever. And again, those are frankly conversations we can't really have on TikTok, because if you were even to suggest that there are people who think that it's possible Luigi did it and that it's justified, then that will get you kicked off of TikTok. Now, apparently it looks like YouTube's a little bit more forgiving on free speech, a little bit more willing to accept people talking about that. That's the discussion. It's not saying how I weigh in on the situation. It's just saying that's the reality of the matter, is that there are people who believe that even if he did it, they would want him to go free. And we did talk about that on the podcast. We talked about the legal issues. We talked about the possibility that this could be a defense of others or a self-defense case if Luigi is going to say that he did it. So we don't know yet whether or not Luigi, the defense team, is going to say. And let me clarify something. Let me clarify something about he did it or he didn't do it. Technically, when someone's charged for murder, for example, when someone's charged with murder, but it was an act of self-defense, then what we are acknowledging is that the person did indeed take another person's life in self-defense, right? And so then you have that difficult area of saying, well, did he do it or did he not do it? So yes, a person who takes someone else's life in self-defense did do that act of taking someone else's life. But we don't call that guilty of murder, because self-defense in our country is not murder. It's self-defense. And so it's not handled the same way. So we did talk about those nuances, the differences of between if it was a matter of self-defense or if it was a matter of defense of others, then it's not murder. It's not murder in the first degree. It's not treated the same. And in fact, you can't, in most places, you cannot go to jail for self-defense if it's deemed self-defense. Now, what we don't know is we don't know if Karen Agnifilo is going to claim self-defense. But it was a tip of the hat on her part. This is what I said got me kicked off of TikTok for lives. Now, I'm not kicked off of TikTok in the sense that I still have an account on TikTok. My account is still in good standing, and I'm allowed to post short videos, right? I'm allowed to do all those things. The only thing that I'm currently not allowed to do is go live on TikTok. And I'm told that I will be allowed to go live again Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's basically to the minute of when they shut me off last week. So I was in the middle of my Wednesday show, and about a half hour in, they shut me off. I get to go live again a half hour into my normally scheduled live on Wednesday. And I plan to do so. So I will go live simultaneously. But what I can do here on TikTok what I can do here on YouTube that I can't do on TikTok is explain that Karen Agnifilo may have signaled that Luigi's defense is going to be a self-defense case, that it's going to be a self-defense against a what she called a murderous healthcare system. And that's what got me kicked off of TikTok, because they called that hate speech, calling the healthcare system murderous, even though all I was doing was quoting Karen Agnifilo's actual words. Now, the screen's kind of small for me. I'm going to see if I can blow this up, because I see comments coming in, and I either have to put on glasses, which I can put on my nerd glasses to see better, the little tiny print. How's my nerd glasses? I got my nerd glasses on. He did jaw-dropping handsome hotness to this crime. Fair. We talked about that on the podcast interview that I had today as well. Not guilty for reason of sanity. That's funny, of sanity. I'm assuming that was not a typo, that you're actually saying not guilty for a reason of sanity. I was going to say that the defense, I can assure you, is not going to claim insanity, but your typo was not a typo. I'm sure it was intentional, so good job on that. What else do we got? She called them terrorists, right? And again, if I were to repeat that same thing on TikTok, I would be in trouble. So we'll see how it goes when I go back to streaming simultaneously on TikTok and YouTube, I will have to be careful and not say things like, hey, Karen Ignifilo just called the healthcare system a murderous healthcare system, because I will be booted. And next time, I assure you, I think the levels are you get kicked off for 1 week, which I just got kicked off. The next time is 1 month or more. And then the third time is kicked off for good. So if I get suspended again for my lives, it'll be for at least a month. That's going to hurt really bad for people who want to follow my channel and my content. So we'll see how that goes. Enough about that. What other kind of questions do we have? Again, this is open tonight just for hanging out until we get bored. I realize it's kind of, you're used to structure with me. I usually have an agenda and I tell you the things that I'm going to hit for the night, and then I hit those things and then we get out of here. So tonight's open question and answer for your questions or whatever about Luigi Mangione or the Bryan Kohberger cases. Both have been a little slow. I continue to watch things all the time, so I'm watching other content providers, long form, especially on the Idaho 4. So I'm up to speed on some of those if you have questions, anything like that. Let's see. What if BT was about to announce more ways to deny claims in his speech to investors? I do feel like at the heart of this whole issue, right, is the denial of claims. United Healthcare was the center of attention before the shooting of Bryan Thompson for leading the way in denial of claims. They had gotten that press recently. They had been protested more than once at their headquarters in Minnesota by groups that was basically making a big deal out of United Healthcare denying claims. They had employed AI technology to increase the automatic rejection of claims, right? So all of this stuff was done in the name of increasing their profits. Is it possible that is it possible that Bryan Thompson was going to brag about or announce even more measures to increase the denial of claims? I don't know. I don't think there's anything to suggest that. I think what we have is, and personally I think, and again, my opinion is just an opinion, so don't take it as I'm shutting down all of their opinions, but my opinion is that whoever did this was taking it out on United Healthcare and their denial of claims, and they saw an opportunity where Bryan Thompson was going to be speaking, and it was publicly known where he was going to be speaking and what time he was going to be speaking there, and it was an opportunity for that person to take action and do that. What he was going to speak about exactly is unclear, other than it was an investor conference, so it does talk about, hey, you should invest in United Healthcare, and here's the reasons why. We're going to make so much money. And the way that they were making money, in a large part, one can argue, see, this is where I have to be careful, because if I tell you they make money by denying claims, somebody could shut me down and say defamation of character or slanderous or whatever. But what I can tell you is, in my opinion, one could argue that that's how they were making such great profits, is they were getting better at denying claims and not paying for things. And that makes them more profitable. So that is an argument that can be made. Let's take a look at other questions in here. Let's see, I don't think he did it. There are too many inconsistencies with timestamps when he was supposedly rode the bike through New York City and how long it took him to get to all those places. I agree, Courtney. I believe that I have made several statements that I believe that there's a strong possibility that a group of individuals did this. I believe there's a strong possibility, and I don't know if this is going to make me unpopular with some of the Luigi supporters, but there's a strong possibility that Luigi Mangione was involved, but with a group of people who pulled it off. And he may not have been the actual shooter. He may or may not have been involved, but if he was involved, it's possible also that he wasn't the actual shooter. As one of the early documentaries, it was the documentary, I believe, by the New York Post, as one of those early documentaries stated, the shooter went into an area of Central Park in which there are no cameras, and that law enforcement lost the shooter for quite some time. And as we know, then someone matching the general description of the shooter rides out of Central Park and they start following that individual. Who is to say that the shooter that went into Central Park and the person who came out of Central Park are two different people, and that a group of individuals conspired to throw off law enforcement by having multiple people being followed who had the same general description, wearing dark clothing and a backpack and a face mask, and these individuals were seen all over different places of town at the same time. And so it is possible that a group of individuals knew that they were throwing off law enforcement, having them chase after red herrings everywhere. And so how many people could have been involved in that? Was it well planned out? That's the argument. And so it is possible in my world that Luigi Mangione is not guilty in the sense that he wasn't the shooter. He may not even have been involved. Chances are, in my opinion, a little less likely that he's not involved somehow. But whether or not he was the actual shooter, or whether they're, and whether the actual shooter is still on the street, because again, let's presume for a moment, for the sake of argument, let's presume for a moment that the shooter was not Luigi Mangione, but that Luigi Mangione was in on it and was in Central Park to ride out of Central Park and be followed. It is my opinion, that my best guessed opinion, that the famous picture we have of an individual looking into the camera, dead into the camera on a taxi cab in New York, looks a lot like Luigi to me. Out of all the photos that have been published about the shooter, the one that looks the most like Luigi to me is the looking right into the camera. And that to me felt like, and I've said it many, many times, it felt like a staged photo. Like literally that person in the cab knows there's a camera there and wanted to get a photo op. And why? Not to show off, but because they want law enforcement to focus on the wrong guy. So if that's the case, and if that's Luigi, then the shooter, if it was a different person who went into New York, into Central Park, that shooter changed clothes and walked out the park on foot, not on e-bike, and is long gone. Perhaps still free on the streets, maybe out of the country. Who knows? But the person who rides out on the e-bike dressed similarly gets picked up and followed, and maybe somebody else involved, who knows, gets picked up 5 days later. And now everything is all hands on deck to prove that the guy that they arrested is the guy who was also the shooter. But we have a major time gap between when the shooter goes into the park and when the person seen leaving the park. And we don't know. That's my take. We don't know that that's the same person that goes into the park as the person who comes out of the park. So great questions. Let me see if I can catch up. Any update on PA, laptop, etc.? I don't believe there's an update on the Pennsylvania. Let me cover that for those who may not know, and I will try to get back to the comments. So the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is currently being given until, I believe it is April 16th. So we're at April 7th right now. So I believe the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania was given until the 16th or the 17th, but I believe it's the 16th, to rule on the motion to suppress, essentially, or to basically toss out the arrest of Luigi Mangione in Pennsylvania, filed by his attorney in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Thomas Dickey. So for those who are coming up to speed, I'm going to give a little bit of a background again. Luigi Mangione is facing criminal charges in 3 different jurisdictions. Pennsylvania and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has got him for basically presenting a false identification, for some firearm charges, etc. New York, the state of New York is trying him for murder, and the federal government in the Southern District of New York is trying him as well for basically committing a crime across interstate lines. And so that includes bringing a gun across interstate lines to commit a crime, going across, using public transportation to commit a murder, those things. So there's 3 different systems that are going against Luigi Mangione. So in the Pennsylvania case, I believe they have until the 16th of April to rule on whether or not that arrest is illegal. If you are not familiar with why that arrest may have been illegal, we can cover that. But as far as I know, nothing new has come out of that, and I suspect that the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania will wait till damn near the last day to make their ruling. Everyone, I feel like, is waiting to find out, will that arrest stick? And because if it doesn't stick, then how much of the evidence against Luigi Mangione goes out with it? So everyone's waiting with bated breath. We got 3 jurisdictions that are all waiting to find out what we're going to do is, was that arrest legal or not? So I think they're going to take to the last minute on that one. When does Pennsylvania need to respond to Dickey's motions? We covered that. I believe it's the 16th. I believe it's the 16th. I've got Luigi Mangione's website here. If you're watching on YouTube, I will swap over and show LuigiMangioneInfo.com. We'll scroll down to the middle section about the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Yeah, so this doesn't probably tell us easy when I just know that it was officially announced that they had until the 16th to respond to the amended omnibus pretrial motion for relief filed on March 11th. So you can see that March 11th is when Thomas Dickey, well, that was the amended, let's see. Yeah, this looks like the long one that Dickie filed. So anyways, that's the 16th. We believe it's the 16th. So I think we've covered that in detail. I've got up on the screen the actual website where you can go. Again, LuigiMangione.info.com is the official legal defense. See, legal defense information. This is put together by his attorneys, and they're tracking all 3 jurisdictions, the federal case, the state of New York case, and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Let me see if I can get caught up on some more questions. Who was BT meeting with? It was cold. How come he didn't try to enter the door that was to his right? So Bryan Thompson was going to an investor conference. It was across the street from the hotel in which he was staying. He was arriving early to that investor conference. I believe it was like, what, 6:40 in the morning when this happened. The investor conference, I believe, was at 8 o'clock. He was early. There's been many comments that by a private security detail that used to be Bryan Thompson's private security bodyguard has no idea why he didn't have his bodyguards with him that morning. And yes, there was an entrance on the side of the building that he could have gone into. There was an entrance at the front of the building. And so I think, again, it led somebody to question, how did the shooter know what entrance Bryan Thompson was going to use and be laying in wait in the right place? So those are all great questions. It indicates some pre-planning in that thing. And that's going to, of course, come up in trial. They're going to say he planned this out. He stalked his victim. He knew the movements, knew the times, because it's premeditated murder. And that's what's going to be used to support that idea as a premeditated, is the fact that the shooter knew exactly when and where to be to pull that off. Weird that the feds left out the Starbucks guy in the complaint. The Starbucks guy. So there was the Starbucks girl they said he flirted with, right? Or was that the Hostel girl? Anyways, there's lots of guys that they're not talking about right now. Like, for example, the taxi cab driver who said he saw them all night long. That doesn't mean, again, by the way, I mentioned this just recently to somebody. This bit that because we haven't heard from the taxi cab driver who said, I saw the shooter. He was here all night on the corner. The people are asking, what happened to him? Well, he may have been deposed already to a grand jury. Keep in mind, and again, if we need to cover a little bit how the legal system works, a grand jury has been convened already in the case of Luigi Mangione. They have not indicted Luigi Mangione yet. What that means is a grand jury's job is privately to look at all the evidence that the prosecution has and decide if it's worth taxpayers' money to proceed to go to court. It is not a determination of guilt. It's a determination of, is there a strong enough case to proceed to court. So a grand jury has already been convened and a grand jury has been working on this. But it has apparently been the case, now with 100 days past the arrest, that the grand jury has not indicted Luigi Mangione. There's a lot of speculation on why the grand jury has not indicted Luigi Mangione. But what I'm saying is, people like the Starbucks guy, or people ask, what about the lady that was drinking coffee that saw the shooting right in front of her? How come we're not hearing from her? These people may have been, and you can probably assume that they have been, deposed and have spoken to a grand jury already. We just don't get to see that. That grand jury is convened in private, and those proceedings are convened in private. And that will be part of the discovery that the defense will get, is what people said and what witnesses said what during discovery. As an interesting aside, by the way, and I had no idea I could rant this long about this, as an interesting aside, the prosecution has been trying to say that they don't want to tell the defense during discovery all of the people who testified and give them their names. And the reason being is they're trying to paint Luigi Mangione as a dangerous person because the public is so supporting him that someone will kill or hurt the witnesses if you name who they are. So out of safety for the witnesses, the prosecution is saying that they don't want to reveal who the witnesses are at this point, out of safety for the witnesses themselves, because there's a fear that somebody will do harm to them. Again, these are things that I probably can't say on TikTok, so thank goodness YouTube so far hasn't booted me out of this channel. All right, actual shooters out of the country and out of the day of the Lou was a diversion. He knew that cab got that pick. Yeah. So I would say that's a strong argument, right? That there's another person who was the actual shooter and that Luigi was a diversion, and that the shooter is still free on the streets or in another country, perhaps. And please understand, I'm not asking for anything to happen, and I'm not doing a call of action, and I'm not promoting violence. It's a thought thing. if the shooter got away, is the shooter going to do it again? That's what you've got to ask yourself. Now, for those who think, this is my opinion, for those who think that if the shooter takes out another CEO while Mangione is on trial for murder, does that mean that Mangione gets to walk because clearly he can't be the shooter? No, it does not mean that. It doesn't mean that at all. So, I mean, unfortunately, for those who want that to be what's going to happen, even if the real shooter is on the loose still, and even if the real shooter does another event while Mangione is on trial, I would not expect it make a bit of difference to Mangione's trial. But that's my take. How did they get the photo looking out the door of the taxi? Everybody has asked that. I would like to know that as well. That's the $1,000,000 question. I don't want to speculate on it too much, but that has been asked a lot of times. Maybe the cab driver took it. I don't know. Hey, Brutally Honest, thanks for saying hi to me in the chat. I'm trying to catch up to the chat, so I'm a little behind, but thank you for stopping in, and thank you for saying a personal hi. That is awesome. Thanks for everyone who's hung out with me so far. Again, there's no official format tonight. This is just open questions and answers, so I'm doing my best to kind of read through these things. I want to see the video from Starbucks, not just those bad stills. Correct. Everybody wants to see that. And that video probably has been seen by a grand jury. Again, that proceeding is done in private. So and whether or not the defense has seen it, we're not even sure. The defense is claiming they don't have all the discovery. We don't know what part of the discovery they have or what part they don't. Taking a drink. All right. Let's see what else we got here. Someone said that the still photos we all see must be part of the videos, X the Starbucks guy. Yeah, maybe. Couldn't the roommates in the hostel confirm if he left early in the morning and or what he was wearing? So, Michelle, this is such an interesting comment. I'm glad that you asked this question. This is one that's been driving me up the wall. Yes, we know that for those who know about hostels versus hotels, a hostel is an area in which you can check into a room at a hostel and you can be assigned a random person to share a room with for a cheaper rate. So you just kind of go there and like, hey, I just need to, I want a cheap rate room and I'm willing to share with a complete stranger. And so that's part of the whole thing of a hostel, right? So one of the things that I have pointed out to many, many people that tell me that I don't understand how a hostel works, and true, I've never been to a hostel, but I do think I understand a little bit how a hostel works, is that I asked, so let me break this down for you if you're not aware. Luigi Mangione allegedly stayed at this hostel prior to the shooting. Luigi Mangione was there for nearly a week, according to the official documents, the official story, and the official timeline. Luigi Mangione stayed with 2 individuals at the hostel, of which I asked the early question, have these people been interviewed? How do we know that they aren't the accomplices that I've been saying from the very beginning? Luigi could have been one of several accomplices. What if the people staying in his hostel room were the accomplices and they were all working together? To which I got picked on by people, you're an idiot. You don't understand how hostels work. They're complete strangers. Halfway true. You can also check into a hostel with a group of people and say, we would like to share this room. Or you can just have one person check in ahead of time and then you come and you just join them. Like, so this attitude, like that a hostel means that the people have to be complete strangers to each other is not holding water for me. It doesn't mean that they can't have known each other. So then, but then the other question that comes in about the whole hostel guest, the hostel roommates, is they have apparently stated after they were let go. So there's an indication that someone has interviewed the people who were staying in the hostel with the shooter. That they said that the entire time that he was there with them, he never removed his face mask, not even to eat. That's super interesting. So why would this individual go down to the lobby and remove their face mask? Now some would say, oh, well, maybe you're required to when you're presenting ID to show your face. Fair, I'll give you that. But what I'm saying is, even his roommates claimed that even to eat, the roommate, the suspected shooter, never took his mask off or lowered his mask even to eat. So it is interesting to me why we're not looking a little bit more into these hostile guests that were with him. Have they truly been vetted? Were they? My big question is, I could see a scenario. I can see a scenario in which law enforcement early on decides that these 2 guys are just random guys and let them go and never got their pertinent information to follow up with them if they later on find out that they all knew each other. So is it possible that law enforcement interviewed the two Hostel people, or maybe the Hostel people were gone and they were just simply told by someone else third hand? I don't know. How far did law enforcement go down the rabbit hole to see if the people who were staying at the hostel with the alleged shooter were connected in any way, shape, or form? How easily did they let it go? Because again, I will maintain one of the problems we have in law enforcement in this country is all too often, once they've decided who they have picked for the crime, they stop looking at alternative suspects. They start to exclude everyone else because they already know who did it. So if they decided at some point that Luigi Mangione was the shooter and the guy that was in the hotel was Luigi Mangione, then they don't give a rip whether or not Luigi Mangione knew anyone else or whatever, because they got their man. They know who they're going for. They don't need to spend a lot of time chasing rabbit holes. So I don't suspect that they would spend a lot of time doing so. Let's see, what else do we got? This is a sensitive topic, I apologize, but do you think that if he allegedly wrote in the journal that he did it under an assumption that he wouldn't be alive when they figured out who did it? So I think what you're trying to say, Emmy, is that do you think that he was planning on, I'm not going to say it, you almost got me to say it. I absolutely rail against the whole word unaliving. So was Luigi Mangione, if he was guilty, was he planning on doing something extreme and wasn't planning on getting arrested? I don't think it makes sense for many, many, many reasons. One of which is allegedly when Luigi Mangione was picked up, allegedly he had a confession letter in his backpack that stated something to the effect of, hey, I really respect the feds. You guys do a great job. I'm going to save you some effort. I acted alone. This was all me. You can follow my bank records. I'm the only one. There's nobody else involved. So that doesn't speak to a person who's going to do something extreme to themselves and didn't plan on being arrested. It sounds like somebody who actually would more likely have gone to the Altoona police or the Altoona McDonald's to be arrested because they were planning on turning themselves in. Now, of course, things changed when Luigi Mangione got an attorney, Thomas Dickey, and Thomas Dickey's like, let's talk about what happened there. And then confession or not, even if that did exist, confession or not, the way in which you were arrested was illegal. So let's put that on the back burner for a minute. That's a nuanced conversation. Let me explain a little bit before I get back into the comments why it's a nuanced conversation. An attorney cannot, so let's say for a moment that Luigi Mangione did it and that Luigi Mangione confessed to it in writing, and that Luigi Mangione went to Altoona, Pennsylvania's McDonald's to be picked up by police. Let's for the thought experiment, let's assume for a minute all that is true. Thomas Dickey cannot come in and say, hey, I realize you want to confess to this crime, but you're not going to do that because they arrested you illegally, and I'm going to say that the whole arrest was illegal, and therefore we're going to toss out your case. He can't do that. Thomas Dickey cannot go against his client's wishes. So you must understand, if you're going to hold the logic that Luigi Mangione went there to be picked up because he confessed and he was ready to give himself up, it doesn't make sense why Thomas Dickey is fighting the arrest and saying it's an illegal arrest and that they need to suppress the entire arrest and everything that was found on him. Because again, Thomas Dickey cannot do that against his own client's wishes. So what does that leave us? It leaves us questioning, did Luigi really confess? Was there really a confession letter? Because if he was willing to confess, what changed? How did Thomas Dickey convince his client not to confess if he was already ready to confess? So now we have to question, was there really a confession? Or is that what they're telling us was in the bag and wasn't really there? So I hope you followed all that logic. Let's take a look. Jen says, the one roommate was taken into handcuffs to the police station for questioning. I didn't see that. If you're talking about the roommate, you're talking about somebody in the hostel. I didn't see that, so that's interesting news. I'll have to look into that, and maybe you can help me out find that. Somebody said, Emmy, I thought that too. Before I was fully invested in the story, it sounded past tense. So that's talking about what we talked about just a moment ago. Brutally honest, and all executive payment system denied Brian Thompson his security detail. All found those costs way too steep. So that looks like the smiles tells me there's a little bit of sarcasm in there, but the AI executive payment system denied his security detail because it was too expensive. That's humor. I get it. I feel like I hear my wife talking. She's either talking to my aunt or she's talking to you guys, and I don't get to hear it. Are you talking to the people online?
Me?
Yeah. Okay. So sorry about that. My wife's throwing me off because she said she had the microphone in the other room. I heard her talking. I thought she was trying to talk on the show.
Sorry, no, I was talking to Monica.
All right. Are you live on the mic when you're talking to Monica?
No.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I guess you can't.
I can't hear you. All right. So sorry for the technical difficulties. Let's get back to a few more questions. We still have time for some more questions. Michelle says they will say it's a copycat. Right. Possibly. Jen, I can't imagine the greed in a person to not be content with his big salary and bonuses and then do that insider trading to get even more money. So Jen, you're talking about the lawsuit that Bryan Thompson and Andrew Whitty were facing in regards to the I think it was the Fireman's Fund for the Hollywood Firemen, or I think it was Fireman's Fund. They were basically going to be going to before the Department of Justice on basically investigation into the fact that they were being investigated for antitrust, basically. So the Department of Justice, they had been told not to purchase a smaller company because it was going to be an antitrust violation. This is, they being United Healthcare, was told not to purchase a smaller company. It would be an antitrust situation. They went ahead and did it anyways. The Department of Justice launched an investigation then into United Healthcare and their purchase of this other company. That investigation was going to be announced to the public and was going to cost United Healthcare a bunch of money. So what happened was Bryan Thompson and Andrew Whitty and another executive, or maybe two, cashed out a whole bunch of stock, United Healthcare stock, and cashed out a huge amount of money before it was publicly announced that the Department of Justice had them under investigation. What we call that is kind of insider trading. They had insider information and they profited by selling while the stock was still high and before it took a plummet when it was announced that they were under investigation. All of that is relevant to motive. Did someone want to shut Bryan Thompson up before going to testify before the Department of Justice? Was somebody pissed off at Bryan Thompson from the fire pension thing, group, because he cost them their life savings? There's a million people with motivations. There was protesters protesting United Healthcare at their headquarters because they were denying claims. Now you've got the fire pension group that had been ripped off by Bryan Thompson in this big, huge insider trading thing. They were under investigation by the Department of Justice. All of these things are not just me speaking out my ass. They're in mainstream media. You can look it up. These things are all still out there for you to verify and prove. I also have details about it on my timeline. I'm going to take a second, by the way, to show you again my website. This is devilsadvocates.info. There's two links at the top that are Idaho 4 and Luigi Mangione. If you click on Luigi Mangione and then you wait for my super slow responsive website, I don't know why the hell this is so slow. I need to talk to my service provider. It's going to pull up a massive timeline of things that I've been putting together on the Luigi Mangione case, which includes things like, and again, it's still freaking spinning on this page for some reason.
So while you're waiting for that,
yeah.
Did you address what Emmy Brutally Honest was saying about the executive power system?
I'll look.
They denied Bryan Thompson his security detail?
Yes, she was being, I think she was being a little sarcastic with that the AI, artificial intelligence, had basically decided it would save them money by cutting his security detail. So she was making
so it's not true?
Right. I think she was making a joke. Anyways, I'm showing on my YouTube channel this timeline I put together. This includes information about the Department of Justice investigation and links to it in case you are not aware of that whole spin and that whole possible theory. Let's see. This one I don't understand. He had money. Why not get a single room? Yeah, that's a good question as well. It's a legitimate question. Michelle Forrester, and there is an option for a private room. He had cash, but some reason opted to share a room. Right. So, I mean, you guys are bringing up a good point. You guys, this is why I say, how do we know for certain that the shooter, if that person who stayed at the hostel, see, that's the other thing you have to keep in mind. There's a scenario in which Luigi stayed at the hostel under an assumed name, Mark Rosario, but is not the shooter. There's also a scenario in which the shooter stayed at the hostel, and it wasn't Luigi Mangione, right? So then the question becomes, why not get a room to yourself? Why take the risk of having two roommates for a week and not showing your face to your roommates ever when you're eating food. But why even take that risk if you've got the money? So it leads to the question, have we fully vetted the roommates? Good questions. Tom's the man, never heard. So Tom being Thomas Dickey, I'm sure you read. I never heard of that. I don't know which, I'm a little behind on my comments, so I'm not sure which one that one.
Hi, Brutally Honest.
Yeah, I'm Brutally Honest. Thank you for coming in. I love it. Thank you so much. Does anyone have any clues where LM's belongings are after he left Hawaii? I'm a mom, just worried about this behavior. Mystery, no calling. Any thoughts on cell phones? Did he have one? So let me address this a little bit. I want to make it clear, if it's not clear already, that a person wanting time out from their family to clear their head or whatever is not a crime. And if Luigi Mangione even wanted to go under an assumed name to avoid family and stuff like that, and to avoid having them know where he was at, that is not necessarily a crime. People are making this huge deal over the fact that Luigi Mangione went dark for a period of months and that his family didn't know where he was at. And I understand everybody puts in the, what do you want to call it? The emotional appeal. He's from an Italian family. Italians always know where their family's at. They're big on family. Everyone would have known. He missed a family wedding, Luigi did. He promised that he would be at this wedding. So something was going on, i.e. there must be some kind of mental illness. I have said a million times, by the way, I don't believe Luigi Mangione has any mental illness. And in fact, I have stated many times my reason why it's obvious that Karen Agnifilo is not going to argue any kind of mental insanity or mental health issues in this case. She would have had to have disclosed that quite a while ago. And there's been no indication that they're going for any kind of mental illness. So I don't think, again, Luigi Mangione going dark, if you will, from his family means anything in particular. So people can need a breather, that need a break from people. Now, to play devil's advocates with that position, maybe it is. Maybe it is true that Luigi Mangione was taking time away from everyone because he didn't want to be talked out of something that he was planning on doing or working himself up into doing. That is a possibility. But again, I just want to state, him going dark from his family in itself doesn't mean anything. It could indicate that maybe he was just wanting no one to talk him out of something that he had set his mind to do, playing devil's advocates with the situation. Let's see. He had a deadline past the defense team to file notice of mental illness or insanity defense. If they haven't submitted it yet, is it now too late for them to claim this at trial? Basically, Cloud, yes. So if your client is not mentally able to assist in their defense, that needs to be told to the judge very early in the proceedings. They don't necessarily have to tip off that they're going for an insanity plea, but what they do have to do is they have to tell the judge, hey, look, my client is incapable of assisting in his own defense because he has this mental disability or this mental disability. And that needs to be disclosed ahead of time. If they were to try to pull, if Karen Agnifilo would try to pull some kind of maneuver this late in the game saying that he's had a mental disability, it would make no sense. Why? Because think about this. Karen Agnifilo has already requested that Luigi Mangione be given a specially configured laptop to assist them in reviewing the documents and the material and the massive amount of discovery against him so that he can help assist in his own trial. You cannot say, on the one hand, my client has mental disorder or mental disability and be saying he needs to have a laptop to help us build his own defense. Which one is it? Is he incapable of defending himself and assisting his defense or not? So the fact that they have asked for a laptop so that Luigi can assist in his defense already has told the judge he is capable of defending himself and does not have a mental disorder. So I don't believe that's even an option on the table. That's my take. Has BT's wife ever been questioned possibly hiring people to do this? So I mean, you and I know, everyone knows, the very first person you suspect in any kind of murder is the spouse. You always suspect the spouse. I do believe that his wife was contacted early on. This made national news. In fact, it made national news that when she was asked, is there anybody you can think of that would want to harm your husband? She said, yes, my husband has received threats. What were those threats related to? She was asked. I think it had something to do with denials of claims or something to that effect. So she already had tipped off law enforcement. She had been interviewed by law enforcement, and she had told them that, yes, she can think of somebody who might want to harm her husband, and it had to do with, insurance issues, with claims issues and things like this. So she had been looked into. How deeply, we don't know. How quickly law enforcement ruled out his wife, we don't know. I personally don't suspect his wife. Out of all of the scenarios that I have contemplated, the two scenarios that make most sense is the money trail and a professional hit, which will really screw up everyone's head in America if that's what happened. And then the whole, what we basically are being told is that Luigi Mangione wanted to make a statement against the healthcare system. All right. Some believe that it's shrooms. Oh my gosh, Jen. This is one of the many content violation, community guidelines violations I've had on TikTok. In the early stages, somebody indicated that because Luigi Mangione had admitted to microdosing mushrooms, that must mean he had a psychotic break. I cannot state more clearly that I think that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. You do not have a psychotic break from microdosing mushrooms. Even on a high dose, what you might call a psychotic break is temporary. It is not lasting. It happens during the duration of the experience. That conversation of me saying that got me my first community guidelines violation for talking about illicit substances on TikTok. Let's hope on this test that does not happen to me today. All right, what else? And I don't mean that wasn't, Jen, that wasn't meant for me to attack you on don't bring up the shrooms thing. I'm just saying, oh my gosh, that brought back memories because I got in trouble for giving my thoughts about the shrooms thing. Maybe see how isolation is before you're willing to risk being imprisoned. Can you talk about the cell phone burner, etc., that the person was on the phone? So I can, LLN. So, I mean, here's the thing. I don't know if this is what you want me to talk about, but I will say this. One of the things that has led me to believe to this day that the shooter has conspirators is that phone call. Who is he on the phone with? Now, some have said that Luigi Mangione admitted that doing what he did to Bryan Thompson required basic social engineering. So some have argued all he probably did was he called the hotel and he pretended to be somebody that he wasn't and got some kind of information about when Bryan Thompson was going to leave the hotel. I've been at enough hotels to know that they don't talk to people like that, so he would have been to be one hell of a salesman, but that's one possibility. But more than likely, and this is what I always jokingly say, that shooter who was moments away from shooting Bryan Thompson and is on the cell phone before shooting Bryan Thompson is not ordering a pizza. And he's not talking to his family, and he's not having a call from a buddy that came in and like, hey buddy, I'm busy right now, I'll get back to you later. No way in hell somebody about to commit what he was going to commit is going to be on the phone with somebody on a random call, which means that phone call is related, in my opinion, to the shooting one way or another. Whether it was social engineering, which I don't think is very likely, but whether it was social engineering or whether he was talking to an accomplice, someone who knew to tell him Bryan Thompson's on his way out. Bryan Thompson's coming down the elevator and he's going to be coming out the front door in a few minutes. Whatever the case may be, that phone call to me shows accomplice. What does that mean for for Luigi Mangione? He's an accomplice to murder, maybe not the murder, or is he the murderer, or I don't know. Yeah, but again, you can still get the death penalty. You can still get all these things for accomplice to murder, but it does change what you're charged with. But I do think that that phone call, again, to reiterate beating a dead horse, that phone call is not ordering a pizza and it's not a random call. That call is related to the shooting somehow. And it hasn't been revealed. It may have been revealed during a discovery, and so the defense may know what the prosecution is. It may have only been revealed to the grand jury, which again, the grand jury has been convened and the grand jury is seeing things and has been seeing things, and so they may know more about that phone call. But that grand jury process is behind closed doors. So we don't get to see what's happening with that. The two phone calls. I'm not sure about the two phone calls. The huge missing piece is what happened during those last few months. I mean, if you're talking about when Luigi Mangione went dark from Hawaii. I don't know exactly what it's going to help with this case. You know, I'm not sure what you mean by it's the huge missing piece of what happened. You would have to explain, I guess, what your thoughts are there. I might riff on it if you give me why you think that is going to be important to know what happened during those few months. Wife could have hired a hit. Yes. So much doubt. Correct. Follow the money. Follow the money is why I say we can't ignore the Department of Justice inquiry. That is one of my number one things I always say is follow the money. Follow the money. So yeah, following the money is big. That's why on my timeline that I'm showing on the YouTube channel, I talk about, in fact, if I do justice and I search through my document, I can probably go and find the Department of Justice right there. October 2023, the Department of Justice begins an investigation beginning in October 23 focused on potential antitrust violations related to the United Health's acquisition and business practices. Anyways, there's a bunch of information here on the website about that. Follow the money is already part of my scenario because it's a big one. And again, it leads to the question of how many people had motive to kill Bryan Thompson. It didn't have to be just a disgruntled person, somebody who's upset because their mom died of a denial of claim. It could be a million different people. There's a lot of people with motivation. So the question is going to be, what is Luigi Mangione's defense going to be? Is it going to be, yes, I did it, but it was in self-defense or defense of others? Or is it going to be, no, I wasn't even there. I got an airtight alibi. Go look for somebody else. We're not sure yet.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So what was the status of Bryan Thompson and his wife? They were officially separated, or were they starting to file divorce?
So it is unclear to me, other than they maintained two houses within about a mile or a mile and a half from each other. They had children. The indication, but I haven't. So in the media, they're trying to spin it like they're a happy family and parents of children. The fact that they maintained homes within about a mile of each other in the same city indicates it wasn't a business arrangement. It was they were living in separate. So I'm reading a lot into this. My interpretation is that they were separated. At least I don't know if legally separated. I don't know if they were going through a divorce, but it seems to me that they were separated. I have also heard rumors, and so I'm afraid to even to place those about Bryan Thompson's whereabouts, and there may have been some reasons why his wife may have had issues. Sorry about the dogs. They're going nuts in the background. I think hopefully my wife can take care of and clean that up in a second. But
I'm on it.
Whether they were separated or not, I'm not sure. But what we do know is that they were maintaining. I'm so sorry about the dogs. They're going absolutely ballistic. We do know that they were living in two separate homes in the same city within about a mile and a half each other, which indicates to me that, again, it wasn't a business arrangement. It was a more of, I don't want to be in the same house with you, but we have kids. Wow. I can't even hear myself talk over the dogs. So sorry. All right. So that covers that. We'll take care of it in the future, by the way, and I will not have dogs in the next room. There will be 2 rooms over, and you won't hear them at all. Because once they get started, as you can see, they never stop. All right. Could LM possibly been registered as an attendee to the conference so a call would be less suspicious? Good question, Michelle. I don't know. That's a good question. Never really thought about that particular thing. But I don't think even so as an attendee, I don't think they would. Again, Bryan Thompson was staying at the hotel across the street from the investor conference. So I don't think that any part of somebody who just registered for the conference gets to know the whereabout and agenda. Can you put them in the garage, Rhonda? Or?
She's leaving.
Okay. Anyways, I don't think that being just registered for the conference would allow somebody to find out exactly where Bryan Thompson is staying and when he's heading over to the conference. So that's my only thought about that. I just really have lost my train of thought with those dogs. I will not let that happen again. They will not be in the next room. All right. I think it was social engineering since he mentions it himself in his notes. Right. That's something allegedly in the confession, which may or may not be a legit confession from Luigi Mangione, is that he indicated that it took simple social engineering. And so was the phone call and a social engineering, talking to somebody in the hotel, confirming when Bryan Thompson was heading out. Who was that person? How did he get them? So where was he before New York? Just a mystery. Yeah. Well, yes, right. So the official timeline has him coming into New York about a week before the shooting. And so they've got movements tracked from when he basically disappeared in San Francisco, when he showed up in New York, and that timeline's been getting more and more clear as far as what their official statement is. Yeah. But I don't know the question as to where he was is going to, what I'm trying to get to is I don't know how it really helps the case. Again, if Luigi Mangione is preparing to do something, then he may have gone dark for a period of time. And I don't know that it makes a difference to what happened. What happened was what happened. But that's the part I'm trying to make the connection is why, what does it matter what exactly he was doing in that time between it, unless it's part of his alibi. Now, if it's part of his alibi where he was, then that is a big deal. Separated for years, Jen says, I think when she was referring to them living in two separate houses. Probably got separated after the DUI charge. I did hear about the DUI charge. I did hear about other things as well. So, but again, that's speculation, Michelle, and it's fair. I speculate, it's fair. So I'm not saying that, wow, between sneezing now and the dogs, you guys have had a lot to deal with. Let's see, and his strip club activities. That's the one, Jen, that I wasn't going to mention, but you just mentioned it, so I just read it. Jen says that he was accused of going to strip clubs and stuff like that, and that might have pissed his wife off. Yeah, Jen, I've heard that as well. But again, I can't prove that, and that may be not true, so we need to be careful with that. But that is something I heard as well. Also interesting that nothing from his electronic devices has made it into evidence presented to the grand jury. That cloud, I think, may be half accurate. What I do believe is that the defense, Karen Agnifilo, has indicated that what is on the electronic devices hasn't made it to her discovery, hasn't been given in discovery. That doesn't necessarily mean that it hasn't been presented to a grand jury. Keep in mind, the grand jury proceedings itself is something that hasn't been fully given over to the defense. So the grand jury has seen witness testimony that the defense hadn't seen as of the last time Karen talked about it. That includes potentially information on the hard drives and the computer chips and so on that were supposedly in Luigi Mangione's possession. Those things may have been seen by a grand jury, but have not been as of the last moment that I read from Karen Agnifilo. And again, things change daily, so she may have seen it by now, that she had not seen that yet. Yeah, so I'm caught up with chat. We're at 56 minutes. I did say that this was open to Luigi Mangione or Bryan Kohberger, and that, but we didn't hit Bryan Kohberger at all tonight. It's been 100% Luigi, and that is perfectly fine. However, I generally go about an hour to an hour and a half, and we're at about the hour mark. So do you have any last minute questions, comments that you want to talk about? Will it be made public what is in discovery once KFA finally gets it? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. So some things can be agreed upon by the prosecution and the defense and the judge to keep it sealed out of the public, but will only be presented at trial. So there is very likely, in my opinion, going to be a significant amount of information that's going to be in discovery that will not come out to the public. It'll be something that only the jury will see. And there may be even rules put on by the judge on what Karen Agnifilo or the prosecution is allowed to say about the things that are in discovery that have been basically sealed under basically an order to not discuss. So it's possible the judge will be like, okay, hey, like I said, prosecution is saying that they're worried about a witness that may be harmed if it's known who the witness is. So the judge may agree and say, look, yes, the defense needs to know who that witness is, so you're going to do it, but it's going to be sealed from public record because we don't want the public finding out who that witness is. And then Karen would be able to, at that point, say, we have heard about witnesses and we know the witnesses' names. However, we're not going to talk about the witnesses. But I can assure you, and she can give general things. We can assure you that this person's not in danger, blah, 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 those things. Anything new on Coberger? No, there's nothing new on Coberger other than a whole bunch of true crime podcasters who come up with theories all the time. But, and by new, I mean, I don't know when the last time you heard me talk about it. I did a big talk on Coberger's latest released documents. So there hasn't been anything new that I have discovered since the big last rant I did on Coberger. But I don't know if you saw my big last rant on Coberger. So if you haven't, I think you can find it here on my recorded lives on YouTube, and you can go back and you can listen to me covering those last documents that were released. As far as I saw this morning, there were no new documents released in the Coberger. So again, the only thing we have new is some speculation from YouTubers like Jay Embry and Harsh Reality and Drip Drop from Crime Circus, who I tend to watch some of these guys on their analysis. And they've got some theories and stuff, but it's really based on the same documents that I've already covered as well. Aren't there going to be hearings about Coberger these upcoming days? That's going to be interesting for sure. Brutally honest, I think so. Coberger's trial is set to be in August of this year. And currently they were going through basically motions in limine, which is basically that both sides are presenting and arguing about what will and won't be presented in court. So that's an ongoing process. Every single day, practically, the defense and the prosecution are battling out with a judge on what is going to be allowed to be presented at trial. Basically, the term motions in limine means on the edge of. It's basically saying these are things that are going to happen on the edge of the court happening. So a trial is happening in August, and right before the court, or right on the edge of the trial starting, we're now going to agree on what the rules of engagement are going to be. What are we going to agree is allowed to be said in the courtroom, and what's not allowed to be said in the courtroom? As example, is it going to be allowed that Dylan is allowed to refer to the suspect as having bushy eyebrows? If it's said in these arguments back and forth that no, the jury will not be told about bushy eyebrows, then when the trial happens and someone says, Dylan says, well, I saw that he had bushy eyebrows, you will hear from the defense, objection, because they've already discussed this during this time. These motions in limine, that we will not bring up the subject of bushy eyebrows in the courtroom. So that's what's happening right now, is both sides are working out what are the rules of engagement in the court. And it's not necessarily a hearing date. It's just constant paperwork coming in back and forth. Do we know if BK's trial will be televised? I do not believe that Bryan Kohberger's trial will be televised. Unfortunately, it's a growing thing in America to not televise your courts, so I don't know that it will be. But it's in Boise, Idaho. I know that the courtroom itself is relatively small, and there's an overflow room, like a conference room, in which it sounds like they're going to allow people who show up at the trial and can't fit in the courtroom to perhaps sit in the overflow room and watch the trial proceedings live from the overflow room. But it won't be the same as being on TV. So more than likely on these cases, we're going to get a reporter who gets to go in, and you get to have a sketch artist who gets to draw a nice little sketch artist picture of what it looked like in the courtroom. And you will have to trust that mainstream media's reporting of what happened in the courtroom that day is legit. Now, maybe we'll get audio. I don't think we're going to get audio, but I don't think we're going to get video and audio of that trial, unfortunately. This is one of those things that they want you to trust the legal system, that it's done properly, and that you can trust the decision of the jury because they saw things that you didn't see. Conversely, by the way, as my little rant that I always go on, is that we also, as the public, are seeing things the jury will never see. Because there's fights that take place in the court system, and there may be stuff that you and I, any reasonable person, would think is relevant to the case that the jury will never get to know about, right? And so we will be blown away in a lot of times to find out what the jury didn't know that we all knew, or vice versa. There may be things that are, like, for example, in the Coberger case, none of us, I presume, have seen the photos, the horrific photos of those victims. So we can't see with our own eyes what position the bodies were in, how much damage was done. Was there anything written on the walls or any kind of crazy stuff like that? We won't see those, and we will not probably even hear about it. That'll be something that the jury and the jury alone will see. And we just have to trust that when they saw it with their own eyes, that they would see the same things that we saw. So that's just the way that's going to have to play out. Does anyone listen to Luigi's podcast, Law and Crime? Jesse, is it biased? I'm nervous. I heard somebody watched it and they said it wasn't very interesting, but I haven't looked for it myself. Any other last minute questions before we close down for the night? I want to thank you, by the way, for coming in tonight. This has been a really It's hard getting the YouTube thing going, but you guys have been troopers. I know that a lot of you are coming over from TikTok. So again, I thank you so much. And by the way, like I said, I believe my TikTok ban gets lifted on lives at 6:30-ish Pacific Standard Time on Wednesday, which means my next coming live on Wednesday. I used to go live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on TikTok. I will be late because I won't be able to go at 6 o'clock. I'll be able to go at 6:30-ish when they officially lift the ban. And so I plan on going live there. I may start early on YouTube at 6 o'clock so I can stay in my own routines, and then just add in the YouTube or the TikTok feed at 6:30 when they finally lift the ban. And then let's hope I don't get banned again. Or at least I will hope that I don't get banned again. All right, any other last questions? Either Luigi Mangione or Bryan Kohberger. Going once. Going Monica Salta or Solita. Solita, I did that to you again. I called you Monica Salta before. I'm so sorry about that. Like my wife, it's like that you're pronouncing it wrong, and you were on it. Sorry about that. Anyways, good to see you. I didn't see you until just then. All right, going once. Any other questions for me in particular? I'll give you guys a chance to talk. It looks like you're asking each other some questions. So I'll let that continue for a second. Any other questions for me going twice? All right. So, yeah, we're all good tonight. Thank you again for coming in. Thank you for supporting this stream. I will be live. I'm planning, I think, going live at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on YouTube on Wednesday, and around 6:30-ish when TikTok lifts my ban, I will join also the TikTok stream. When I'm only here on YouTube, I will be more open and frank, because it looks to me like I'm going to get kicked off of TikTok if I keep talking about the things that I do. So I encourage you to watch my long form content on YouTube, where I feel like I'm allowed to say things more than I can say on TikTok. Yeah, and thanks for saying goodnight to Rhonda. She's here as a trooper as well. And I'm really, again, sorry about the dogs. I will make sure that doesn't happen again. The dogs will not be in the next room when I go live. That was ridiculous for a good solid 10, 15 minutes. So.
Sorry. There was somebody at the door.
Yeah, and we can't plan that, but we can plan the dogs being somewhere else. So have a great night. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and I will catch you next time.
Good night, everybody.